you develop leadership by being put in positions to practice it early in life.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
And that's one of the things we're missing a lot in our world lately is we don't put kids in positions to practice leadership, right? And what do I mean by that? Participation trophies, or everybody has to play a certain amount of time on the team. That's not life. Now, don't get me wrong. When you're younger and you need to be exposed, I'm okay with that. But as we progress, like I can't tell you working with high school athletes how many parents would call and be like, my son deserves more playing time. And you're like, man, you been to practice lately? You should come watch your boy. Come watch what he does in practice. Tell me if he really deserves this.
Mm-hmm.
Because the other side of leadership is accountability, right? You don't get to lead if you're not accountable for your actions. So I think that's where, for me, is I learned to be a leader I liked it. Like, I like knowing that if I worked hard, I could stand out amongst other people. Like, I didn't have to just be like everybody else. And we got to be okay with that, right? You got to be okay with a little bit of a pecking order in there. And I know, in today's world of everybody's equal and nothing's offensive at all, sometimes we struggle with how do I balance that out? How do I lead with compassion? How do I lead with inclusion? Because I think it can be done. I've done it before. We have this idea that leadership just separates people, and I think poor leadership can. But if we're teaching kids and giving people the opportunity to really become leaders, that includes teaching them how to be inclusive, right? And so think about, go back to your team, right? Football, one of the biggest things I always remember from football that was different than the other is you could be the best player out there, but if the other 10 dudes completely blow their assignments, you're probably going to lose the majority of your games, no matter how good you are. So as a captain, your goal is to make sure your weakest link becomes stronger. So you have to be inclusive in your leadership, right? You can't just isolate the weakest link, because then you're only as good as that player. And if we took that approach to leadership in our society, instead of shunning or pushing away the people that aren't as good and only wanting to lead the people that have talent and the people that are going to make us money or get us to where we want to go, if we remember we got to lead everybody, that's the positive leadership that I think we need more of in our world. Inclusion. And I think that balances out a lot of what people are seeking in life. Right? You can still become good. You can still have your natural talent rise to the level, but you're bringing other people with you. And I would say, quite honestly, in our politics and a lot of places that we put leaders, and I use that in quotes, they're completely divisive. They're not including people. Mm-hmm. And that's what we got to change.
Yeah. I think the true test of a leader is his ability to develop and create other leaders and leadership. You use the football analogy. It shouldn't all, a great team, you're not always just going to see the team captain hyping people up or getting on people if they're slacking off. That should be the entire team. If you're slacking off, your teammate next to you should be leading and letting you know, hey, step it up, get your head in the game, or, you did something awesome. Hey, badass play, whatever. And when you have that group leadership type of mentality, I think that that's the signal of a truly effective leader. Like, for example, right now, I think the general consensus in our country is that it's just hard right now. It's not the best time ever for the United States, for the world. But you don't really see in the media development of other leaders. It's kind of like this, just whoever's at the very top of the hierarchy, that's who we look to.
Yeah, but I'd even argue those people are not leaders. Like that's a flawed system where they're there because of money and influence and whatever other background stuff is in place. But the reality is, and I've talked about this before, and unfortunately I have found myself a little more into politics this cycle because I think it's historic what we're facing with Corona and all the craziness. But that doesn't dismiss you from leading people around you, right? And the reality, the truth of things is the leaders in your day-to-day life are the ones that impact you the most. So while we're consumed watching removed leaders in Washington, D.C. or New York, wherever they're at, we're missing opportunities to lead the people around us, right? And so what do you think we need to have to be an effective leader? If you're looking for a leader, what are skills or talents you think people have to be a leader?
Listening is the first thing that comes to mind. Listening, you need to lead by example as well. You can't lead people unless you're willing and able to do whatever the objectives are that you're leading. You can, there is fear-based leadership, which can be highly effective in the short term.
Very short term.
Very short term. But I think for long-term overall effective leadership, listen. You need to have empathy. You need to be able to lead by example. You need to set boundaries.
Wait,
Those are some of the
boundaries. What?
Set boundaries of set expectations. Set expectations, metrics for things. Whatever team you're leading, there always has. And this was the biggest reason I got in such big arguments with doctors when we were talking about the cancer stuff with my dad. But there always has to be a way to measure your progress. As a leader, whatever you're leading, any team, any group, you have to be able to measure progress, or else what are you doing? So those expectations, boundaries for, hey, if you go outside of this boundary, then you're off the team or you're out of the group because it hinders our progress that much. Yeah.
Consequences.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. Yeah, I think those are all good characteristics. For me, it boils down that the first thing to become a good leader is you have to realize it's never about you. Right? And I think that's where people stumble, right? And I've seen it in my police career many times over. People want to get promoted. Mm-hmm. And they get promoted and they immediately start referring to the people that work for them as my shift or my crew or my team. Possession, ownership. And I'm always like, dude, you got to understand, you work for them, right? Like when you become a leader, it's never about you. And we have this misconception, right? Leadership brings me status, brings me power. Yeah. As a leader, a lot of positions in life, if you get a leadership role, people have to do what you say because you're put in that position. Mm-hmm. But your goal should not to be to have to make people do it. It should be that they want to do it because you create an environment of success, right? So for me, the first thing about leadership is just making sure you understand it's not about you. And truly effective, best leaders are very humble about that, right? When you move to a leadership position, you are now serving others even more than you did before. So why are some of the best football coaches, for example, people that weren't very good football players? Mm-hmm. Right? Because they learned the game inside out. They learned how to not be a very good player, but make it work for them. So they can coach that person that maybe other coaches haven't looked at because they're not naturally gifted or maybe not the most talented.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, absolutely.
Right? So you don't have to be the best at everything involved in your realm to lead others. But what you got to do is be able to find the people who are good at it and get out of their way and let them do it.
Yeah. Servant leadership is
popular buzzword.
One of the most effective ways to be is the better that you can serve your team for them to be more effective in their roles, the better leader you are. Yeah, you can have all the charisma in the world, all the rah-rah, the motivation. You can be this great speaker, all these things. But if you can't listen to your team, identify issues and problems, and better serve them and enable them to be more effective in their roles, then all of that stuff, the charisma, the leadership, the speaking, it really doesn't matter unless you can really enable your team.
And ultimately, your measurement as a leader to me is what's behind you after you're gone. Right? You see these coaches, you see people that run businesses that are leaders. And by the time they're done in their tenure, wherever they're at, the team's awful or the business is in shambles. Even though they came in and they were such a well-respected leader, they're going to do all this and that, and then they leave and it's in complete shambles. Like, to be the most effective leader is when you leave, whatever you created should be able to thrive on. Right? You should have created other people that are better than you to move things forward.
Mm-hmm.
Right? That's the goal for business. Right? Our goal in business isn't to build or earn a certain amount of money and then shut everything down and walk away.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, for some it may be, but not for ours.
Yeah.
Ours is to create something that lasts, right? That creates longevity. So
yeah, you need to put processes and systems in place, and just as importantly, you need to have your successor, because whoever's in that leadership role needs to have those same qualities, you know, because once you're done with your leadership, someone needs to fill that spot.
Qualities, but not skills. They don't need to have your same skills. They need to have the same qualities of putting others first, being selfless, but not the same skills. And I think sometimes we get confused on that, right? Like, I want you to be the leader after me, but I want you to have the exact same skills I have, so you do it exactly my way. That's not leadership. That's management.